Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art School Live, where we have demos for you with all sorts of mediums and subjects and just all the fun things that go along with art. So if you're new to us today, Art School Live is typically hosted by our CEO, 𝙀𝙭𝙥𝙥𝙡𝙤. He started it during the pandemic and just has kept it going every weekday. It started out every day of the week, and now we are every weekday. We're live at noon Eastern, bringing you marketing tips, feedback, critique tips, and demos from all kinds of artists. And he is currently traveling back from China. He's been there for about a month, talking all about the plein air community with all sorts of different museums and organizations. And so I, Carrie Stober, get to fill in for him this week. If you aren't familiar with me, I've been with Streamline for 13 years. I love pastel, newly love gouache. So I'm the pastel community ambassador. I also co-host the Pastel podcast, which I'll talk about in a little bit. I manage the Plein Air Salon art competition, and I am also the marketing project manager. So I wear a lot of hats, but this hat of hosting Art School Live is a lot of fun. I love getting to do it, getting to meet new artists, chat with everyone in the little chat box, and just getting to watch people paint because art supplies are fun. I love it. And today I'm really excited for what I'm going to share with you. A couple of weeks ago, we had an artist, I cannot remember who it was, but she was using Pan Pastels as part of her underpainting process. But it wasn't a pastel painting. So I have my own few Pan Pastels, which I really enjoy, and I have no idea how to use them. So I wanted to bring in someone who would educate us on how to use them, what they are. Like, I don't even know if they have binder in them, so I know very little. So I'm very excited to bring in Michael Townsend. He is the materials and application specialist for Golden. And we are going to bring him in and we are going to chat all about Pan Pastels. Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks for having us. And I'm really excited to help show what these materials are and go through them and show some tricks and some ways that you might not even thought about these things are able to be used. So
I'm excited for it. Let's go. I have lots of questions.
Okay.
Do you want me to start off with a question?
Well, let me start off. Let's real quick, just so people hopefully know who I am. My name is Michael Townsend. I am a material specialist here at Golden Artist Colors, but I'm also an artist. So I've been working with all sorts of stuff. I've got a studio arts degree from Mansfield University, and I've learned all sorts of stuff: welding and marbling and airbrush and suminagashi and you name it, pouring stuff. I love materials. I'm an art materials geek. I'll admit it. So
yeah, that's me too.
That's what stuff like this. This is one of the, Pan Pastels. I know that you have a set, and I think that's the part of, well, how do I even use these things? Where's the, instruction manual? And I think that hopefully I'll be the manual for you for today. So we're going to go through all the different ways to work with them. They're really fun material that I'm not what I would consider myself to be a pastel artist. But when you start pushing these materials around, you get to see they're more than just a normal pastel. These are very, very different than anything you've used before. And that's where all this excitement's coming from. So for those of you who don't know Pan Pastel, let's switch down here. This is just a quick little manual that comes with the materials. And there's the background history. This is the original set of colors. There's 80 colors here, and there's a whole range of main colors, and then there's tints and shades. And they give you a good range of colors, just like any other pastels. There are now 53 new colors that have been added on here. But this book does a really good job of showing what these things are applied with, which are these sponge applicators. Now, the sponge applicators come in a huge range of shapes and sizes. The newer ones here are the gray ones.
Oh, I was just going to ask that. I was like, mine are not gray.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, where do you get those? This is one of the new packs like this. And there's a huge range of shapes. Do you have one of these little tools here?
Yeah, I just got the square one when I was at the convention.
Yes, there's a whole range of shapes and sizes of these. And these allow you to manipulate the product. So instead of having a stick of pastel, you load up the sponge and you apply onto the surface with those. And I'm going to be showing those really quick, okay? But they have a little, I call them little Barbie doll slippers. That's what these things kind of are. So these little sponges, there's different shapes and they can slide right onto these. And you can keep using those. So even though there's a little bit of color on here, don't let that, bother you, because it's not really going to affect how they work. You can see there's
Yeah,
still not color
I've
coming
washed
off.
mine, and like you can still see all the color, but I've washed them and they don't transfer.
That's right. So you can wash them. They are soap and water friendly, and you kind of squeeze them out and put them out on a paper towel. But this little bit on here is not going to affect it. So just like a brush, you get a nice new brush and all of a sudden you stain it with phthalo blue. It's like, well, yeah, it's stained that color, but it's not going to stay that way. Okay. So let's get right into these tools, because I think this is really kind of the main starting point here.
Can I ask you a question before?
Yeah, of course.
So when it comes to these pan pastels, they're compressed down into these pans, which is obviously why they're pan pastel. Do they have binder in them, or is this just straight pigment?
So yeah, great question. They're very similar to, if you think of how chalk pastels are created. They start off as a powder and then they get compressed down into those shapes. This, instead of that, is basically they're compressed into these little pans right here. So this is the pan pastel. This is something, if you have any of these sets like this, do not over tighten these. It's very difficult. If you squeeze these too tight and you get them on there like you think they're going to dry out, you're going to have a really hard time getting them apart. Okay. So just snug them. These things don't dry out. It's not like it doesn't have like something that evaporates out. It's just pure pigment.
So there's no binder.
There are fillers in there, much like, with chalk pastel, there's obviously chalk in there. But the binder is the fixative, okay? But they do have some sort of binder that's in there. A lot of the stuff is kind of proprietary. I'm not really allowed to talk about it very much. So I would probably like to keep my job and not give away trade secrets. So this tool right here, you can see this has a rounded edge. And you can load up the edge and get very clean lines. And you can create little shapes. Or you can get out the bigger ones. And I usually will use this shape here, okay? So with these tools, this is the load up sides. Don't try to use these sides. It's not the same density of material. There's like a porosity here.
Oh,
and the concept is load this up like 1, 2, 3, and then apply. Okay. If you want it to be stronger, you just simply load it back up again, and you can apply some more. So these allow you to be able to block in color very quickly onto a surface. Usually this is a black paper. This is just a watercolor paper. I'll talk about some of the substrate choices, but you can see that you can get some really uniform tones, okay? So as we work with these, the other great part about having this flexible sponge is you can create all sorts of shapes. You don't have to just kind of block them in. You can create anything like this. If I go to this tool, if I go over here, we mentioned the blender. I think the blender is one of those mysterious materials.
Yes, the transparent blender.
Yep. And this is essentially, there's no pigment in here. It's just the filler materials. So if I work with this, it's going to start to look like it's white, but there's no pigment in here. So this allows for soft gradations of color. So if you see this, you can see how it's nice, smooth color quality, as opposed to when you're just using the brush by itself. Let me do this again. I can spread this out, but it's a bit different. It's more like I'm making a color wash here as opposed to a glaze on here. But it gives you some really nice blendability. And in fact, one of the great things about this material is that it doesn't have to be used on like a normal pan pastel paper. You can use this on a whole range of surfaces, and including things like sketchbooks. This is just regular copy paper. And you're thinking, well, there's no way you can, use, a chalk stick. And it's true, because this material is applied. The pressure that I'm doing right now is creating the force to push it into the paper surface.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of like you've got your sketchbook out, you're doing some quick sketching, maybe you don't have the ability to get out the brushes and the watercolor. Well, you can come in with this material and you can create the intensity as you see fit. Now, the other really cool thing about these materials is they actually are erasable. Okay. So let's say I want to make it look like this person has, a little bit of a shadow or an outline or a little idea bubble. You can actually remove this material just by simply erasing it. It comes right off. Okay. So you can use that if you find that you've got too much material down, or if you just want to bring back the whiteness of the paper. Those things are very doable. And if you find, okay, I messed that up, I just come right back in and put it right back in together like this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be afraid to try different surfaces and materials. Don't be afraid to kind of practice on things. These are actually very handy to have if I'm trying to mix a couple of colors. Let's say that this color here is this is the I think the primary blue, and I just want to make it a little bit lighter of a green. It's not really a good, sky blue. Well, I'm going to come in here with, probably would help if I put this on camera. A little bit of that in there. I can bring this color right in on top. So you could mix right on your surface. And these are very low powder. You don't have a lot of dust with these materials, unlike your regular types of pastels.
Mm-hmm.
So when you work on these and you're up on an easel, you're not going to have all that classic kind of crumbles and stuff kind of dropping down in.
Yeah.
So they're really fun that way. And I'm just going to come in with a charcoal pencil, and I can work right on top of this.
So with something like this, with a sketchbook that's not necessarily pastel paper, would you have to use a fixative to keep it from coming off?
No, we usually find that it works pretty good just by itself. Some different examples here. It's because it's such a thin layer. I mean, you may want to have a little bit of release paper between things, but if you look here, this opposite page, there's really not a whole lot of color coming off.
Yeah.
And it's not really a major factor here. So as long as you kind of lightly tone things, you'll be fine. But it does bring up a great question about fixing, is that, yes, this is still pastel. This is still a fragile material, and you can smear it with your finger just like you could with anything else. So do you have a favorite fixative that you like to work with?
No, I don't really like fixatives because I feel like it just makes everything super dark. I've used it if like I need to add a little bit more tooth because I've gone too heavy, but for the most part, I don't use it.
Well, the fixatives are usually good if you're trying to display. Normally, a fixative would be like there's two different types. There's a workable fixative, and there's a final fixative. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the final fixative, it's meant for the last application. Fixatives are very weak materials. They're think of like a spray varnish, but instead of having a lot of binder in there, it's very little binder and a lot of solvents to help to kind of reactivate, resolubilize those chalk materials and kind of glue them back together again.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you frame them, they're not falling down in.
Right.
With these materials, it's not as necessary if you put them behind glass because it doesn't have the same crumbliness to that. They're not kind of being drawn to the surface of the plexi or the glass sheeting.
Right.
So if you do fix them, it would be for some reason like what I want to show today a little bit here is this is a material, this background that I have is the surface that I'm going to work on today. So what I have here is a material called pastel ground. This is a liquid product that I thinned down, and I actually added some. This isn't the right color. What I had behind me. I used burnt umber light, just a touch. So I made a toned surface, and I'll get a little ASMR in here. This creates a beautiful toothiness so that the paints will receive this surface, or vice versa, I should say. Now, this is a material that there's micaceous iron oxide, which is this beautiful, sparkly black background. Wonderful for dark nighttime skies. but there's no real pigment. It's actually micaceous, real iron oxide pigment, which I think is really amazing. There's an absorbent ground if you want to do color washes. And then there's also this pastel ground. This is like the full strength pure stuff. See how it's kind of grayish, translucent?
Mhm.
And then this is just black gesso. And if I take my pastels here, Pan Pastels, sorry about that, a little scratchy. I can go right onto this surface. So I'm going to create little mini versions of my painting today. So each of these surfaces will do a little bit of a different roughness and granularity. You can see with the black, I have to kind of load up a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Now you see, I'm going to try to really kind of smooth these out, but you can see that especially on a surface like this, it's kind of rough. Can you see that, or do we need to get like a little more of a close-up, Stacy?
Yeah, I can see it.
Let me put this right in here. It's very loud. Okay. So there's a little bit of a roughness here. And if I go back to this blender, the colorless blender, I'm going to load it up the same way as before. You see, I didn't even take anything off of here. I just loaded it right into it. You can't really mess these. You can't contaminate them up. But if I now take this and go into the surface, I can blend in and get more of a transparency, almost like a glaze as opposed to a color wash. So I get some really nice smoothness to it, blend it right in, very easy to work with.
Very cool.
Okay. And that would be different than if I was to come in with my C color. I can load it up with this one. And I can also add a little bit of right there, right into the same sponge, and then apply. So I'm actually mixing them together while applying them. It's very simple to work with. I'm going to go a little bit of a different color here, just for the sake of doing it. And I'll come in here. So this one is the violet, or the Payne's Gray, or which one is this one? Violet Deep. Violet Extra Dark. There's a whole series of these dark shade colors. Really beautiful color. And this tool allows me to work and create edges just like this. So you can use it to do details. You can bring in all those other tools that we were just looking at and just use the ones that gravitate towards how you like to work with them. There's no real right or wrong here. But I can get super soft blending without even really trying. I'm barely kind of whispering along the surface here. And now I just tone that sky up there. I'm going to come in and get a little more brightness. Again, I'm not even taking the paint. Well, I call it paint because it really behaves more like paint than it does a normal pastel stick, because I can get these color fields in and I can just bring that in. I'll try to get that nice edge. I like having that little bit of a black in there to keep a little bit of an outline. And then I can just soften it right up just like that. So super easy to work with, super fun. Really, it's just once you start to get into these, you're going to see that it becomes very intuitive. So don't worry about diving in and trying these things out. You can create a surface. Here's one that's on 800 grit sandpaper. I know there's a lot of pastelists that work on sandpapers. It seems like about the same stuff as the pastel expensive papers. Is that something that you've done before, or?
Yeah, I like experimenting and playing with all kinds of stuff. I've used gesso on different types of papers. I've on canvas. I've created my own sanded surfaces. I use all kinds of stuff.
Nice.
Can you use this with like if you have like a watercolor or a gouache or acrylic, could you use this with those too?
Absolutely. In fact, this is because it's a dry media, you can work on surfaces and really have some fun. Here's one that this is just a study of for the same Courbet painting. So in here, even that little bit that's just here. Let's say that it's a little bit too cheery for me. This is, we want a little more of an imposing sky here. Well, I can just come right in here and put this right on top of my paint. This is just acrylic paint. You can use it on fresher paint. You can use it on, fairly aged stuff. This is probably 3-4 weeks old now. But you can see it's very intuitive, and it's actually a very nice way if you like to get almost like an airbrushed effect.
Yeah.
It's a super easy way to get there without having to get out all the equipment. I'm going to bring some of that blender in here. I'm going to soften these things up even more. And you can really just have a lot of fun with these.
Yeah, that's really cool.
See here where it's a little bit green. It's like, okay, well, let me try to bring back some of that sky color. You just bring that right on in. I think I'm loading my pastel up just a little bit too much. But they're super fun to work with. And then at any point, you can start bringing the other material right back in. You can, in fact, paint with the acrylic right back on top of this. I'll show you another really cool thing with our, if I'm working on oil paints, these have been brayered on. This one shows it a little bit better. So this was dark black oil paint rolled on with a brayer. The Pan Pastel was brushed on the surface while it was still very wet, and then a sgraffito edge just to come in and start bringing this outline.
Oh, very cool.
If I wanted to come right back in with oil paint, I absolutely could. There's no reason, there's nothing in here that's going to impede the adhesion of the different materials. So it truly is a multimedia type of material. And this one's kind of a funner little background.
So did you put that color on when it was wet too, or was it dry when you put
Same thing. Yeah,
okay.
See, it's kind of like a light gray, black, or dark gray, light, warm black here, maybe an ivory black. And you just roll it on there, and then you can work into the surface. Here's another one. This is another one on the pastel, or the micaceous iron oxide. And you can add those tones in as you need to. So it's very easy to come in and just post add as you need to. There's no time frame. Nothing's going to set up on you. You just work right into the surface. So if you were to come in, you can use brushes right into this as well. You can go back into these smaller tools like this. Let me come in. I'll get a little bit of an accent right in here. I can go right into that surface. Get some deeper color, and then I'm going to just say, okay, now I'm done with those. I have a little more control using my pastel pencils, my chalks, however you want to work right in. There's no right or wrong here. You just keep on working.
So you mentioned that with the bigger sponges that you're using to cover a lot, you can't use the sides because it's a different texture. Is that the same for the smaller sponges too?
The smaller sponges, it's so the same.
I got like the triangle one.
Yeah, like see how you'll feel there's a smoother side, okay? And then this side is the more porous one, okay? These ones, you can use any side you want to. There's no right or wrong with this one. But any of these kind of shaped ones,
yeah,
you really want to try to keep to the more porous material side, okay? But yeah, they're just super easy to work with. Get you right back into painting, working with them. So don't be afraid to just kind of experiment, because you really can't go wrong with these materials. And if you get to the point, like normally with pastels, you start putting a lot of material on, you may have to go into some sort of a fix to lock things in. A workable fix is toothy. So you have to lock down all those heavier chalks. Let me get one of those out to see if I can show that.
Somebody asked, let me find it here. Can Can you spritz alcohol onto the pastel or dip a brush in alcohol and work with the pan pastel that way?
Absolutely. You can come in with water, you can come in with alcohol, you can put it on the brush and work into it. On this piece, with these are like little tests that we'll do just to kind of see how everything plays. There's 3 different surfaces, and in here you can get in with some of the brush with alcohol. You can mist it on the surface, although that's going to make it very splotchy. But there's really no right or wrong, because alcohol is great because it's going to completely evaporate from the surface.
Yeah.
So all sorts of cool stuff. I'm going to start bringing a little color on here. I feel like it needs something on here to bring in some of this. There's the reference picture that was sent in for this. This is, again, it's a Courbet. This is one of the studies I did before the class here. So I'm going to put this on this side here. Then I can bring these in, and we'll work towards the center in here. Okay, so the first thing would be, I'm going to come in with some of my titanium white and just start to add into these clouds. I just use a little bit of charcoal there to kind of lay out my clouds. So I can come in and get some of those highlights really pretty easy. Now this set that I have here, this isn't one that was pre-made. This set and this one are ones that I picked, you know, because I do have the keys to the candy store here. So I'm able to go through all the colors, and I picked all the ones that seem to line up and want to play well for this. But you certainly have the option of trying to either use one of the sets. If you don't, you know, if you're not really sold on these materials, you don't got to buy, you know, 100 of these things. You start off with a small primary set, you know, a small set that you want to work with. There's like a landscape set like this one. This is going to have more of the basics colors. You can see there's a lot more brighter colors, but all of these can be toned down as you work with them. And again, if you work on paper, you can mix your colors on just regular copy paper and then come in later and then use those just by loading the sponge up from the piece of paper. So I'll dabble in here.
So Dennis asked, what is the average number of paintings that a pan pastel can be used for? So how long do these, like, would a pan?
Oh my gosh. Hundreds. I mean, I think a lot of it is how heavy-handed you work with, but you see I'm barely even lifting. Look how little bit of product is coming on here. So it goes right into the surface. It doesn't really require a lot. And again, it's not like a chalk, a stick. I'm able to bring this in. I'm going to intentionally slow down. I have to do that to myself. I'm a little over-caffeinated this morning. I apologize for that. But just come in here, and you can stretch these out very readily. So you can use as little or as much as you need to here, but you should be able to really work with these sets and get quite a range of paintings done, especially if you think of them as these are all part of the toolbox. You don't have to use just these materials. You can, at any point, you can bring in the chalks that you're already working with. But this is such an easy, quick way to get fast local color. I'm gonna get some more of this Payne's gray in there. See, here's a good example up here. Let me bring this down just a smidge. So see in here where I've got that roughness, right, Carrie? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to now bring in that colorless blender, clear blender, I don't know, something like that. CB is what I'm calling it. I'm going to come in here now, and I'm just going to work it onto the surface. Couple different directions just to kind of break up the pattern. And I can get as light of a tone as I need to. So I can use that darker color to come in just like that. Super easy. And then I'm going to move in. I'm going to come in with more of this deeper color. Get that in there. This is like a nice purpley color. Let's get a little more variety in here. Get some of that red skies at night going on. So much for the calm sea. So we're moving away from the courbet a little bit here. So you can block them in like this, and then after you get the color that you want on here, then come back into the colorless blender and start to transition into here. Now, if you find that you need a little more tightness, you know, switch to the smaller tool. We'll put this one down. I'm going to come right in with this blender. And just work it right on in. If I want just a fine area, let's go in here for some reason. If I just want to come in here and kind of break that up, I'm just using the side and working that in. That basically that little clear powder is just going to merge right into what's already been put down. Then I can come back in with some more white, get a little more puffiness here. Bring that right back in. But it's not loaded up. I mean, to the viewer's question here, you know, there's really not a lot of material on the surface.
Yeah.
And you don't see like a big crumbly, jumbly mess here. It's really, you have so much control. And if I was getting into this where I really needed to get something really tight, I would break out my chalk pastel pencil and really come in to get the details as I need them. A little. Now these tools will also work. I'm gonna get a little more aggressive in here with it. I can use the same tool for these chalk pastels as well. It doesn't have to be only used for pan pastels.
Right.
These are great smudging and blending tools.
I have used them for other paintings.
Nice. So you broke out the soft tools, but not the regular pan pastels.
No, because I just didn't know how to use them other than using them as an underpainting.
Yeah, and I'm, you know, again, I'm not what I would call, you know, a proficient pastel painter. So for me, it's not an intuitive type of thing.
Yeah.
But with these, because there's no way to really mess this up, I can just come in and play with these materials as I need to. I'm not feeling like, oh, I made a mistake. You know, oh, I went past where I wanted to go. Well, big deal. I mean, if I had to, I should be able to get that stuff right off there. I get right back down to the substrate right there. So it's really not something you have to really worry about making that mistake. You can just pick right back up again and work into the surface. Now I've got more of the eraser nubs in there than anything. I'm going to blow those off real quick here.
So I know you can use pan pastels over watercolor. Can you use them under watercolor? Would that still have the same effect, or because that's too much water, would it?
Well, they'll physically be able to be worked on top of one another. I don't think that's going to be a problem. But, you know, you think of if you have a dry piece of paper, it's going to respond to that surface of the watercolor, that wash, very differently than when you start to come in and work on this powdered material. But, you know, I would say I would give it a try. I don't think there's any reason why you cannot do it. There's no forbidden, and you might come up with really a really interesting type of technique by trying these things out. But I haven't seen any issues of adhesion, you know, something where it looks like things are being repelled. here. But yeah, just, really it's just get them out, start pushing them around. And again, if you're like, well, I haven't used them, I really don't want to, waste a lot of, substrates and things like that. We'll start off just by using a block color in and then go right back to what you normally work with. I think that's probably one of the easiest ways to just bring them in. You don't have to really, go just into these Pan Pastels only.
Right.
So now I'm coming in here, a little of these beachy colors. And if you want to, I'm going to intentionally go from everyone that I have here back and forth just to kind of bring in a little variety. I'm trying to make sure my head doesn't get in front of everything that I'm doing here today. So
we've got about 20 minutes left.
Okay. So we're going along here. Everything is, moving right along. But I think that's part of what makes these so much fun, is that I'm not really stressed about doing anything. There's no beat the clock. Like with the acrylics, sometimes you're working with them and you've got to get all sorts of retarders and materials out there. Oils, as you know, if you start to work a little bit into the oils, once you've got a color down, you've got to come up and lift all that back off. They're going to use a rag or Q-tips or something like that to get it back to that surface.
Yeah.
Whereas these, there's really no right or wrong. It just you keep on going. And it's so little material, you're not going to have a lot of problems of, oh, now I've got so much on there that's not receiving the material anymore. So even with this, if I did switch back over to pencils, I can get right on there. I'll get a little more of this where we can see it. Very easy. Go right in there. Work them right together as you need to. Now I'm going to go back. I think the chalk pastel pencils play a little bit nicer on these surfaces. So I can get in there, put these, there's like little oars in here. Got that. I believe there's a big thing of rope here, just from what I can see on the piece. So you can bring these in, kind of reestablish the structure. There's a little bit of a ship out here on the horizon. You can add some elements in as you need to. But you can go right into the surface. It's just such a fun way to work. There's nothing that I can think of that's like, oh, don't ever do this.
Yeah.
And tighten up those caps too tight. When you start to really get these tight, the only thing that's going to work is you have to put tape on either side so you get some grip so you can pull them apart. So any other questions out there that we have for these materials?
Not at the moment, but they will come in.
Well, I'm glad. I'm hopefully enthralling everybody with my...
You are. This is exactly what we needed, was to figure out how to use these things.
Yeah, look how easy that is just to pop it right in there. You don't even... That's why I like these tools. It's kind of like, almost like the filbert brush for these pastels, is that it's very easy to bring some color in. I'm just going to use the corner there. And I can put those into my little ships here and just keep on working. If I find up in here that I want to get a little lighter of a color, it's no big deal. I'm going to get a little more of a muted sky. It's a little bit too bright and cheery for me. So let's bring us some of this in there, just like that. Drop some color in. Make sure you're happy with how that's looking. And then you can start to commit and bring that color together as you need to. If it's like, wow, that's really way powerful, that's really too much, well, I come in here and I can get a little lighter with some white. bring that in, or I can go back to this blender.
So if you put this pastel over an oil painting, would it be compromised in any way? Would you still have to fix it and put it under glass because there's pastel over the oil?
If you end up with it, if it's a fresh oil film, it'll actually work into that surface. And I found it pretty hard to try to get that stuff off of there. With the ones we were experimenting with, it works really well. You know, another thing you can do too is encaustic painters. This is a really popular product for people that use encaustic, and they put these materials right onto the surface, and then you put them back on the plate and you can fuse them right into the wax. Okay? But if it's on the surface like this, it's going to be something that's still going to be sensitive. So you do have to lock these things down. Fixatives aren't going to be a real big problem when it comes to an oil film. Eventually, you'll be able to kind of lock them in place.
Mm-hmm.
With oils, you know, there's a lot of rules that we break all the time with oils. So,
yeah.
But what I think is going on, it's kind of like with a fresh oil film, you're going to have some of that oil kind of rising up and grabbing a hold of that pastel, all these little particles. It should hold it pretty well. So the fixating should be minimal. And if I plan on varnishing the oil painting anyways, it doesn't really matter. So it's going to be, you know, again, a fixative is like a super weak spray varnish.
Yeah.
So if you're going to lock it down with varnish at the end, it really isn't going to be a problem at all. But, you know, varnishing, that's for the long haul. We don't worry about that now. That's for, you know, another 10 years down the road, then we'll have to worry about it.
Right.
Right now, it's just make great artwork, right? I think the oils will do okay. But yeah, it's really, really fascinating material. It doesn't seem to, you know, have a lot of negatives to it. Again, all the things that I worry about with chalk, where it's really crumbly and powdery, you don't really have it here. You get a little bit. I mean, there's obviously some, but it's not like it's a bunch that's really just crumbling and falling apart here.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't like, I mean, I like this kind of more jagged, sharp edge, and then I'll blend together as needed. Other people might want more of these rounded ones. It's like this one. It's going to be a little more, let me bring those back in. It's going to be a little more like this. And I can get a much more circular type of patterning. You know, so you take your time building up as you need to. I think they work really well for all sorts of surfaces. So if it's more porous, like paper, it's going to hold really well. If you get into using, you know, something smoother, you might have to have, you know, a little more work to get it in there. But the materials themselves play really well, one on top of another, without a whole lot of work here. Okay. So I want a little more darkness into those boats there, these ships. So I will come in a little bit in there, get a little shadow thing going on. This is the burnt umber shade, I think. Dark shade, extra dark shade. I mean, really, it's just a big thing of color, right? So
yeah,
I don't need to get hung up on the names. These are all real pigments. There's nothing in here that's like a dye or anything of that nature. Everything is ASTM light fastness rated. There are some materials that are going to be better than others, just like all the other paints that you were going to work with. But for the most part, you know, assuming that these aren't going to go down to a mural, they're going to do quite well just by themselves. So I'm not sure what I'm exactly making here, but I'm going to have something here off in the distance, maybe a little hill or something.
So one thing I want to mention, because we have a lot of pastel artists, blue spruce has been a favorite color of pastels for years and years and years, and they stopped making it, so you can't get it anymore. And in the podcast I did with Marla Baguetta in June, she talked about how she uses the Pan Pastel Phthalo Blue Extra Dark as her replacement for the blue spruce. She applies her sketch with the little soft tool that Michael's using there and puts that in as her sketch with her background, and then goes over it with either Pan Pastels or regular pastels. So if you are out of your blue spruce and you need a replacement, check that one out.
And if you're out of blue spruce, you basically just need the phthalo blue, and then you can bring in some of the black, the carbon black, and you'll be able to get a nice deep color as well. Because again, if you run out of a certain one, you just don't have a certain color, you can always mix them together as needed. So don't be afraid to experiment.
I've always found it a little more difficult to mix the pastels on the paper than to just, you know, have 6 different ones to get what I want.
Yeah. If you have like a piece of paper like this is a regular copy paper, and let's say I wanted to come into that, you know, I want to make my sprucier color, I only have certain colors to work with. You know, I can mix and match them together until I get to where I'm happy with that combination. And then once you're happy with, it's actually kind of a nice cloud color right there. So now I'm loading this up that I mixed with, and then this can go right into my surface in the background, and I can load it up instead of having to, you know, make a new pan or anything like that. You can make your own custom colors. If I'm doing this and I need a little more whiteness in there, I just bring that right in, load it up, come right in on top.
Look at that. Learn something new.
Well, that's what we're here for, right? Is to have people try things out. And I'm a big proponent of try stuff out. You know, there really isn't a whole lot of concerns with these, and just kind of, you know, push forward with them. There's really a lot of great artists that are working with these materials. You know, much better pastel artists than myself. I'm just here to show the tools and show how they can be used. But reach out. There's a lot of great ones on YouTube. I'm sure there's plenty on Art School Live. You know, and I'm hoping that people will take this information and use it to say, hey, I've got an idea for this.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had people that have used these for all sorts of little, you know, pieces of sculpture. People have done them with little miniatures. Have taxidermy people use it. Anywhere where you want to tone. People that do like model railroads use this to create the smoke and the soot and the grime on the side of the engine. So it's really amazing how people will find a new medium and then figure out how to make it best work for them. So as I'm going in here, it's like, okay, maybe that little hill didn't work out. Let's move on with our lives. You go right on top and just keep covering it right over. We'll bring a little happy sky kind of popping through. Got my inner Bob Ross working on there. There. But they're really just a lot of fun. I mean, that's really the bottom line is you don't worry about, you know, don't be intimidated by the tools and these pans of material. When you start working with them, start small, try some things out. I know some people that have just used more of the drawing sets. They're only like 4 or 5. You've got some neutrals. There's iridescent ones as well. We've got like these little mica flake ones. They're really tough to show. I've got one example here. I don't know how well it's going to pick up. Here we go.
Ooh, yeah, that's sparkly.
There we go. So imagine building that into any of your pastels. So you could have everything else you're doing exactly the same, but you get a little this coarse pearl, and you can end up just bringing it right into the piece. So not really any, yeah, it's just one of those things. It's, you can keep working on. I think for something like this, I can get into this type of pastel work because, you know, I can keep going back and forth knowing that if I make a mistake, it's not that big of a deal. And eventually, even someone like myself, I can come up with a really good copy of this painting that has a lot of those really wonderful painting elements that I would want to bring in with oils or acrylics. So if that's any judgment for what these things can do, you know,
right?
If I can make that happen, anybody else can make these things happen too. So hopefully that's what we're looking for, is just have fun with them. I don't like to tell people how to use things, what to use them. I like to give options and give information. Hopefully several ways to work, because then you get to use them your way.
Yeah. No, this was wonderful. It was so informative. I've learned so much. I'm definitely going to have to go and play with mine now.
I hope.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'd bring them to the beach right away, Carrie. That's, you know,
go to the beach, but baby steps. Yes, thank you, Michael. This was great. I wanted to share with everybody, if you haven't listened to the Pastel podcast with Marla Baguetta this month, check that out. We go over this quite extensively. We also have, there was Kim Lordier and Bill Schneider. And then actually coming up next month, we've got one with Harley Brown that we recorded live at the Planner Convention. So that's going to be really, really special. I'm very excited for that one. And don't forget to check out Pastel Live. That's coming up in September. We are going to have so much fun talking to so many different artists and using so many different techniques with different pastels. So I'm really excited about that. Pastel is my baby. It's my favorite. I'll never replace it with anything. As much as I love experimenting with gouache, pastel will always be my favorite. So thank you again, Michael. Is there anything else that you want to share with us today before you go?
I mean, really just a matter of, we're here to help out. So
yes,
these are 53 brand new colors. If you've had some before, there was some gaps that we really filled with the new colors in here. So really enjoy working with them, and, you know, find the palettes that work for you. But, you know, I mean, like I said, I'm an art materials guy. I love talking about these materials. If you have questions, you can always contact us. But I'm not here to pitch myself or Golden. I'm here to show these materials. So really, I hope you enjoy working. I hope I was sharing some great, valuable information out there. And, you know, get out there and enjoy summer. Make some paintings.
Yeah, and I'm going to drop in the chat. We've got an email address that if you guys have questions about any of the Pan Pastels, you could reach out to them and they will answer those for you. They also have a blog. I put that link in there as well. You should definitely check that out. They talk about all their new colors and all kinds of different things, working with different mediums. So definitely be sure to check that out. That's in the chat. Thank you guys all so much. This was such an informative demonstration today. I'm so happy that Michael was able to join us, and I will tomorrow for my final show. I hope you guys all have a great Thursday. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Bye, everybody.